The rooftop was a graveyard of broken concrete and twisted rebar, overlooking streets littered with burned-out vehicles and shattered windows. Evening had draped the city in a gray veil, and the sniper team of the 42nd Infantry Division had settled into their usual routine of watchfulness. Their rifles rested on bipods, scopes trained on distant alleyways, and every soldier's eyes carried the exhaustion of men who had stared at danger for too long. The war had turned this place into a chessboard of death. Every corner was a square, every shadow a possible threat, and every rooftop a battleground between those who watched and those who hunted. Sergeant Cole, the team leader, adjusted his scope with the ease of habit, his jaw clenched tight. He was the kind of man who had seen too much, his stare as sharp as the barrel of the rifle he carried. Around him, his small group of seasoned snipers murmured low, exchanging hand signals and brief words. Each man trusted the other with his life trust earned through weeks of grueling missions, late-night firefights, and silent kills. It was a world where outsiders did not belong. And yet, that night, an outsider arrived. The first sign was the echo of boots on the narrow staircase that led to the roof. At first, they thought it was one of their own, maybe a runner bringing supplies, or a radio operator checking on their position. But when the figure stepped into view, silhouetted against the dim light of the half-broken moon, the entire team froze. It was a woman. She stood at the edge of the roof for a moment, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. She wasn't wearing standard combat fatigues, no bulky vest, no helmet covered in dust and scratches. Instead, she wore a dark jacket that hung just past her waist, fitted combat boots scuffed from long use, and simple trousers. A rifle case was slung across her back. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, strands of it catching the light breeze. The team exchanged glances, their silence louder than gunfire. "What the hell is this?" whispered Private Maddox, the youngest of them, his finger tapping nervously against the stock of his rifle. Sergeant Cole said nothing. He just studied her, his eyes narrowing. The last thing he wanted was a civilian on his rooftop. The woman walked forward, her boots crunching softly on the gravel. Her gaze swept over the men, calm and steady, like someone who knew she was stepping into hostile territory, not from the enemy, but from the very soldiers she now faced. "Who is she?" muttered Corporal Harris, shifting uncomfortably. Command didn't say anything about this. The silence broke when Lieutenant Grayson, the team's commander, stepped up from behind her. His face was hard, his uniform marked by dust and long hours. "At ease," he said firmly, though his tone left little room for comfort. "She's here for a reason." "A reason?" Harris shot back, keeping his voice low, but edged with disbelief. "Sir, this is a sniper team, not He stopped short, glancing at her again. The word tourist hung unspoken in the air. The lieutenant didn't flinch. "She's not a tourist. And she's not here to watch. She knows what she's doing." The woman didn't respond to the muttering around her. She simply set down her rifle case on the rooftop, crouched, and began unfastening it. Her hands moved with quiet precision, like someone who had done it 1,000 times. She didn't waste motion, didn't glance up to see if they were watching, though every pair of eyes was fixed on her. When she opened the case, the glint of metal caught the dim light. It wasn't a standard-issue rifle, but a customized long-range weapon, the kind only professionals or obsessives would carry. The team stirred uneasily. Maddox leaned toward Harris and whispered, "No way she knows how to use that. Probably just some showpiece." But Sergeant Cole had noticed something different. The way her fingers adjusted the scope, the smoothness with which she checked the bolt and chamber, it wasn't hesitation. It was muscle memory. "Who the hell is she?" Cole finally asked, his voice low but cutting. Lieutenant Grayson's jaw tightened. "You don't need to know names, right?" Now, what you need to know is that she's earned her place here tonight. The rooftop grew heavier with silence. The men didn't argue further, but their skepticism lingered in every breath. The woman rose to her feet, rifle in hand, and walked to the low wall at the edge of the rooftop. She knelt beside the sandbags, her posture crisp, her movements efficient. Not a word left her lips. She was already scanning the streets below, her eyes narrowing as if she'd been on this rooftop all along. The men glanced at each other again. "This is insane," Harris muttered, shaking his head. "You don't just drop someone into a sniper team." "Watch her," Grayson said flatly, and so they did. The woman lowered herself into position, resting the rifle on the sandbags, adjusting the scope with tiny, deliberate turns. Her breathing slowed, her finger hovering near the trigger, but never rushing. In the chaos of the battlefield, where soldiers often let nerves dictate their hands, she was unnervingly calm. Sergeant Cole watched closely. There was no arrogance in her actions. No need to show off. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply ready. Still, unease gripped the team. They had fought too long, bled too much, to accept someone without question. To them, she was a ghost walking into their brotherhood, uninvited and unexplained. But ghosts, they knew, had a way of leaving marks that never faded. And though none of them could see it yet, the night would end with her leaving such a mark one that would echo in their minds for the rest of their lives. The rooftop air grew heavier as the stranger settled into her place. She said nothing, moved with quiet certainty, and let the tension ripple around her like wind slipping through broken glass. The sniper team, men hardened by weeks of attrition, didn't know what to make of her. In their world, silence was survival, but her silence carried defiance, as if she had no need to justify herself. Sergeant Cole leaned back against the sandbag, arms crossed over his chest. His jaw worked like stone grinding against stone. He didn't trust easily, and he certainly wasn't about to trust a woman who had appeared out of nowhere, escorted by a commander who offered no answers. Finally, he broke the silence. "Sir, with respect," he said, his voice measured, "a sniper team is not a place for experiments. We can't afford mistakes. Not here." Lieutenant Grayson didn't flinch. His face remained shadowed in the dying light, lines carved deep by fatigue and unspoken burdens. "This isn't an experiment," he said flatly. "She's earned her place." Harris scoffed, unable to hide the bitterness in his tone. "Earned? How?" "By carrying a rifle case up a set of stairs." The woman didn't turn to acknowledge him. She kept her eyes down her scope, adjusting dials, testing focus. She seemed to listen, but not respond, as if his words were just another background noise on a battlefield full of distractions. Cole narrowed his eyes. He knew men who cracked under pressure, and he knew men who carried themselves like predators. This woman was neither. She carried herself like someone who belonged here already, as though the rooftop was hers, long before the team ever laid claim to it. "Name?" Cole asked finally, his voice sharp. The lieutenant shook his head. "Names aren't important. Right now. What matters is whether she can do what needs doing." "Hell, sir, that is important," Harris pressed. "We trust each other with our lives out here. You can't just plant someone next to us and expect. She's not here for you to like her," Grayson interrupted, his tone carrying the kind of finality that shut down arguments. "She's here to do a job. That's all you need to know." The team lapsed into silence, though the muttering tension in their body language spoke volumes. Maddox, the youngest of the group, leaned toward Harris and whispered, "I bet she's never even fired that rifle under real pressure." But his whisper wasn't quiet enough. The woman lifted her head from the scope, finally looking at them. Her eyes were too calm for this place, where every man lived with nerves strung tight as wire. She studied Maddox for a moment, Not unkindly, but with a gaze that pinned him in place like a butterfly under glass. "Pressure doesn't change the fundamentals," she said softly. Her voice was low, steady, without the bravado or sharpness they expected. It was the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command attention. Maddox blinked, caught off guard. Harris smirked, trying to cover the unease that rippled through the group. Cole straightened, his eyes narrowing further. "You think you know pressure? Out here?" She returned his gaze, unflinching. "I know that when the shot matters, it's not about nerves. It's about the math, distance, wind, elevation, breathing. Fundamentals don't change. The only question is whether you trust them or you don't." The rooftop went still. Her words weren't cocky. They were matter-of-fact, almost clinical. That, somehow, made them heavier. Cole let the silence drag before responding. "A theory's easy. Out here, a bad shot gets people killed." For the first time, her lips curved not quite a smile, but something that held an edge of steel. "Then don't give me a bad shot." The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Maddox swallowed hard. Harris cursed under his breath, and even Cole couldn't immediately find a reply. Only Lieutenant Grayson seemed unsurprised, as though this was exactly the moment he had been waiting for. "She's not here to play games," the lieutenant said. "She's here because she's good, better than most." Cole's jaw clenched. He didn't like mysteries. He didn't like not knowing who he was trusting his life to. And most of all, he didn't like the idea that this woman might actually back up her words. "Fine," he said finally, voice low. "She wants to sit with the team? And let's see if she belongs." The challenge wasn't spoken outright, but it hung in the air like smoke. Everyone understood. The woman didn't flinch. She adjusted her position, sighted down the rifle once more, and returned to silence. For her, the conversation was over. She didn't need to argue. The rooftop would decide who belonged. Night deepened, shadows thickening across the ruined city. The team rotated shifts on their scopes, watching alleyways and rooftops for movement. For hours, the tension simmered. Beneath the surface, every time Harris muttered, every time Maddox sighed nervously, every time Cole's eyes lingered on the woman, it was clear. She hadn't been accepted. Not yet, but she didn't try to force it. She simply kept her watch, steady as stone, her breathing so even it unsettled the men who listened. In a place where fear kept everyone sharp, her calm felt alien-like. She wasn't just trained, but forged from something different altogether. At one point, Maddox broke the silence again, whispering toward Harris. "What if she misses?" "What? If she freezes?" Cole shut him up with a glare, but the words had already lodged in the team's thoughts. They were all waiting for it. For the moment this stranger cracked, for the moment she proved them right. The woman, though, seemed to sense it. Without looking away from her scope, she spoke again. "I don't miss." 3 words, delivered with the same calm certainty as before. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Bold claims were common from rookies, but she didn't sound like a rookie. She sounded like someone who had no reason to doubt herself. And that, more than anything, unsettled them most. The rooftop fell silent again, but this time it wasn't just skepticism that lingered. It was the first spark of curiosity. They didn't trust her yet, but they were starting to wonder. And wondering, in war, was the first step toward respect. What none of them realized was that the night ahead would not only test her words, but would etch them into their memories forever. Because before dawn came, the stranger on their rooftop would face the quiet challenge in a way none of them could deny. One perfect shot at a moment when everything hung in the balance. The night settled like a heavy blanket, pressing down on the broken city. Smoke curled from distant fires, flickering orange against shattered windows. Somewhere far off, a single gunshot echoed, then silence reclaimed the ruins. The sniper team had learned to live inside that silence. It was their world. Watching, waiting, calculating. Each rooftop and window became a stage. Every shadow a possible actor in the play of life and death. They knew the rules. Patience was everything, and hesitation was death. Now, on this rooftop, with the woman beside them, those rules felt uncertain. Sergeant Cole adjusted his rifle, his scope sweeping across the darkened street. Nothing moved but the occasional scrap of paper fluttering down the broken asphalt. He was aware of her presence at his side, every motion she made drawing his attention, even when he tried to ignore it. She was too calm, too precise, and that bothered him more than if she had been trembling. She lay prone behind her rifle, her elbows set firmly into the sandbags, her body angled perfectly. It was the kind of posture drilled into every sniper during training, but hers wasn't textbook. It was natural, instinctive, like her body had learned it long ago and never forgotten. Through her scope, the ruined city came alive. She could see deeper into the cracks of walls, the dim shapes of rooftops, the smallest details others might overlook. To her, the magnified world wasn't a place of chaos, but of clarity. Every distance could be measured, every angle calculated, every shot reduced to numbers and breath. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled. Her crosshairs swept across the street, pausing at the broken husks of cars and the jagged edge of a collapsed balcony. Somewhere down there, unseen, men were moving, planning, preparing to strike. She knew it the way a predator knows its prey is near, even before it comes into view. Behind her, Maddox shifted, his nerves fraying again. "She's acting like she owns the place," he whispered to Harris. "Let her play soldier," Harris muttered back. "When the time comes, we'll see what she's made of." Their voices weren't as low as they thought, and Cole caught every word. He didn't silence them. Part of him wanted to see how she would respond, not with words, but with her rifle. The woman didn't flinch at their whispers. She stayed on the scope, her expression unchanged, her focus absolute. If their doubt reached her, she buried it deep, letting the rhythm of her breathing shield her from distraction. Cole finally spoke, his voice carrying in the tense air. "You've got eyes down there?" "Yes." Her reply was quiet, even. "What do you see?" She adjusted the scope slightly, pausing for a moment. 2 rooftops across East Corner, shadows moving. One of them stopped too long at the ledge. Cole immediately raised his rifle, scanning the building she described. It took him a full 10 seconds before he caught the faint shift of black against gray, the silhouette of a head ducking back. His brow furrowed. She had seen it instantly. "Damn," Maddox muttered, low enough this time that no one could answer. Cole lowered his rifle slightly, his gaze never leaving her. He'd been in this city for weeks, trained for years before that, and still it had taken effort to spot what she picked up in a heartbeat. Either she was lucky, or she was the real thing. "Keep it marked," Cole said. "If they move again, we'll take it." "Already marked," she replied. Her crosshairs remained fixed. She didn't shift restlessly like Maddox, didn't mutter under her breath like Harris. She simply waited, her patience carved into every line of her still body. Hours ticked by in that same silence. The night dragged on, filled with distant rumblings of tanks, the occasional stutter of gunfire echoing off stone, and the restless breathing of men who had stared at war too long. Through it all, she never broke focus. Cole found himself watching her more than his own scope. He'd expected a rookie's twitchiness, the telltale signs of nerves, the fidgeting, the shallow breaths, the uncertainty when shadows played tricks through the scope. But she displayed none of it. Instead, she carried herself like someone who had seen this city 1,000 times before, as if the rubble and the silence and the danger were nothing new to her. Eventually, Harris couldn't hold back any longer. "All right," he said quietly, bitterness dripping from every word. "If you're as good as you act, why don't you take the first shot when we get a clean one?" Cole shot him a look. "Not your call, Harris." But the woman finally spoke. Again, her tone level, unshaken. "Fine." The single word landed like a stone dropped in water, sending ripples across the team. Harris smirked, thinking he'd cornered her. Maddox shifted uncomfortably, unsure if he wanted her to succeed or fail. And Cole leaned forward, his jaw set. He wanted to see if she meant it. For another hour, they waited. The city never truly slept, but it had its pauses, its lulls where shadows seemed harmless. Then, at the far edge of her scope, she caught it. Movement. A figure guarded between walls. Quick, but not quick enough. He paused just at the edge of a rooftop, his rifle glinting in the faint light of a distant fire. He was scanning, looking. For soldiers below, the perfect predator setting up the perfect ambush. She saw him before the others did. "Target, 200 meters northeast rooftop," she whispered. Cole jerked his rifle into position, but by the time his scope found the figure, the man was already crouching, half hidden. He cursed under his breath. Too late for a clean shot, but not for her. Her crosshairs were already fixed. She had adjusted for distance, wind, even the slight downward angle of the shot. Her finger rested on the trigger. Her breathing slowed until the rest of the world blurred around her. She inhaled, exhaled, and held. For that heartbeat, she was the only still thing in a world of chaos. And then, she squeezed. The crack of her rifle split the silence, sharp and final. The figure collapsed instantly, his body crumpling against the rooftop ledge before sliding out of sight. His weapon clattered loudly against the concrete below. The rooftop went dead quiet. Harris's mouth hung open. Maddox stared as though he'd seen a ghost. Cole lowered his rifle slowly, his eyes still on her. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She simply lowered her head back to the scope, ready for the next target. She acted as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But to the men around her, everything had just changed. The city seemed to breathe at night, ragged, uneven, like a wounded animal refusing to die. Smoke coiled through alleys, dust floated in the stagnant air, and every broken window stared outward like a blind eye. The sniper team had learned to read the city's breaths, to know when danger lingered close and when silence was a lie. And now, with the stranger among them, the air felt sharper, heavier. The shot she had taken earlier still echoed in their minds. One bullet, one kill, delivered with the kind of calm precision that didn't belong to chance. But none of the men wanted to say it out loud. Pride was a stubborn thing. Cole shifted on his stomach, his cheek pressed to the rifle stock. His scope cut across the rooftops and alleys, sweeping methodically. The night had grown darker, shadows pooling deeper. The enemy would use that. They always did. Eyes open, Cole murmured. The team adjusted. Harris squinted through his scope. Maddox nervously scanned too quickly, and the woman still nameless to them remained unnervingly steady. Minutes dragged, each second stretching longer than the last. The war had trained them to live inside those seconds, but tonight the waiting carried a different weight. They weren't just waiting for the enemy. They were waiting to see her tested again. Then it happened. From the east, faint movement stirred across a rooftop. A shadow detached itself from the dark, crouching low, rifle slung across its back. Then another, and another. Cole's muscles tensed. "Contact," he whispered. 4 targets. East block, rooftop and stairwell. Through her scope, the woman had already marked them. Her crosshairs hovered with mechanical patience, tracking the lead figure. The men were moving with purpose, slipping into position above the street. She knew what they were doing before anyone spoke. "Ambush," she said quietly. Harris shifted, clicking his tongue. "Could be scouts?" Cole shook his head. "Not scouts. Too deliberate." The team watched as the hostile figures took cover along the edge of the rooftop. Below, in the street, their own infantry squad was advancing, unaware of the trap forming above them. One wrong step and those soldiers would be cut down in a rain of fire. Cole's jaw tightened. "We need a clean shot." He adjusted his aim, sighting down on the lead hostile. But the man's body was angled just enough to make the kill uncertain. A half-second too slow, and the enemy would open fire. Cole hesitated, unwilling to risk a miss. Harris cursed softly, his own scope jittering as he tried to line up. Maddox muttered something panicked under his breath. The window of opportunity was closing. And then she spoke. 50 meters east, second hostile from the left, she whispered, her voice calm. "He's the spotter. Drop him first, the others lose coordination." Cole flicked his scope, searching. She was right. The man wasn't. Holding his rifle like the others, he was observing, gesturing, giving silent signals. The spotter, the keystone of the ambush. How the hell did she see that so fast? Maddox hissed, but no one answered. They all knew the truth. She had eyes sharper than theirs. The spotter adjusted his cap, leaned forward, and raised his hand ready to give the signal to open fire on the soldiers below. Cole's gut twisted. He couldn't risk missing. There was no time to debate, no room for doubt. And then, before he could give the order, the woman whispered again, "I've got it." Her scope tracked the spotter, her finger curling over the trigger. Her breathing slowed, the world around her narrowing until only the crosshairs and the enemy remained. The rooftop team held their breath, but she didn't fire. Not yet. "Why isn't she shooting?" Harris hissed. Cole didn't answer. He was watching her, and in her patience, he recognized something rare, something that unnerved even him. She wasn't waiting because of fear. She was waiting because she knew there was only one perfect second. And then it came. The spotter leaned forward, exposing his head for just a fraction of a second. Her rifle cracked. The bullet tore through the silence, and the spotter's body snapped backward, collapsing instantly. Chaos erupted. The remaining hostiles scrambled, disoriented by the sudden loss of command. Two ducked into cover, another leaned over the edge in panic, firing wildly into the street below. Muzzle flashes lit the night, sending sparks into the air. The infantry squad below hit the ground, confused but alive. She just saved them, Maddox breathed. Cole's scope tracked another hostile, and this time he didn't hesitate. He fired, dropping the man who had exposed himself. Harris followed with a shot of his own, clipping another through the shoulder and sending him tumbling off the rooftop. But the last enemy remained, hidden in shadow. The team searched, scopes darting back and forth, trying to catch movement. Then the woman spoke again, calm as ever. "Stairwell. He's retreating." Cole jerked his scope and caught the faintest flicker of movement, just as the hostile vanished into cover. He cursed softly. Without another word, the woman pulled away from her scope, shifted position, and adjusted for angle. The rest of the team stared. What the hell was she doing? "Too far," Harris muttered. "Too fast. He's gone." But her finger rested steady on the trigger. "No," she whispered. "He'll pause. Right at the turn. They always do." And then she fired. The bullet punched into the stairwell opening, the sound swallowed instantly by concrete. For a moment, there was nothing, no scream, no thud. Then, faintly, they heard it. The clatter of a rifle dropping against stone. The thump of a body following. The rooftop went dead silent. Maddox's mouth opened, then closed again. Harris exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Cole stared at her, his scope forgotten. She didn't look up. She simply shifted back to her position. Eyes down her scope, scanning once more as though nothing unusual had happened. "Clear," she said. The infantry squad below scrambled into safer cover, unaware of just how close they had come to being annihilated. On the rooftop, though, the weight of what had happened sank in. She had called the spotter. She had waited for the perfect second. She had predicted the retreat, fired blind into a stairwell, and been right. No one argued now. No one whispered doubts. Cole exhaled slowly, the tightness in his chest finally loosening. For the first time, he let the words come. "Hell of a shot." She didn't smile, didn't even glance at him. She simply stayed in position, her breathing steady, her voice quiet. It was necessary. The men exchanged glances, each wrestling with the same realization. She wasn't here to prove herself. She wasn't here for their approval. She was here because she belonged. And tonight, the city had just witnessed it. The echoes of the stairwell kill still lingered in the team's ears, faint and unreal, like the residue of a dream. For long minutes after, no one spoke. The city below was quiet again, save for the crackle of distant flames and the occasional bark of automatic fire blocks away. But up on the rooftop, silence was a different thing now. It wasn't the silence of distrust. It was the silence of men rethinking everything they thought they knew. Sergeant Cole adjusted his scope mechanically, though his eyes kept flicking sideways toward the woman. He had been ready waiting, even for her to stumble, to prove that she was just another liability. But instead, she had made calls faster than him, spotted details sharper than him, and pulled shots with the kind of precision most men spent years chasing and never caught. And she did it all without hesitation. "Unbelievable," Maddox finally whispered, almost to himself. She called it before it even happened. Harris swore softly, shaking his head. "One lucky shot doesn't mean two," Cole interrupted. His tone was quiet, but it cut like steel. "Two perfect shots." Harris shut his mouth, jaw tightening. Even his stubborn pride couldn't argue that. The woman, however, offered nothing. She didn't defend herself, didn't acknowledge the awe or the doubt that hung in the air. Her eye never left her scope. To her, the conversation was irrelevant. The rooftop was all that mattered. Cole found that both frustrating and unsettlingly admirable. He wanted to ask her, "Who trained you? Where did you learn this? Why are you even here?" But those questions had no place now. A sniper's world was about seconds, and the next second might decide everything. And then it happened. Movement flickered across his scope, subtle, fast, almost imperceptible. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the shifting smoke. But then he saw it clearly. A hostile figure was moving 2 rooftops over, crouched low, his weapon slung across his chest. Unlike the others, he wasn't scrambling or panicked. He was deliberate, careful, and his position was dangerous. "Contact," Cole whispered. "North block, rooftop, bearing 085, moving with intent." The team shifted, scope scanning. Maddox cursed under his breath. He couldn't spot it. Harris finally found the figure but hesitated. "What's he doing?" Maddox asked, voice tight. Cole's gut clenched. He knew. He had seen it before. The man wasn't moving to fire randomly into the streets. He was adjusting for a counter-sniper position. He was hunting them. "Sniper," Cole said grimly. The team stiffened. A single enemy sniper could unravel everything, turning the hunters into the hunted. Harris cursed again, his voice low. "He's fast. We don't have a clean line." Cole tracked the hostile through his scope, but every time he lined up, the man shifted behind cover, staying low, calculating. The bastard knew his craft. "Too much obstruction," Cole muttered. He could feel the seconds slipping away. If they didn't take him down now, the man would set up, and then every one of them would be a target. Then, without warning, the hostile dropped into a prone position, rifle snapping into place. He wasn't hunting anymore. He was ready. Cole's breath caught. Down, he barked. Bettine ducked low behind sandbags, just as the crack of a shot tore through the night. The bullet ripped concrete inches from Harris's head, sending dust spraying. Another second slower, and it would have been through his skull. "Son of a—" Harris started, but another shot rang, forcing him back into cover. The enemy had them pinned. Cole's mind raced. They couldn't stay exposed, but if they shifted position blindly, the hostile would pick them off. They needed a counter-shot fast. He risked a glance through his scope, only to duck again as another round shattered stone near his cheek. The man was fast, disciplined, and terrifyingly accurate. Then he realized she hadn't moved. The woman was still prone, calm as ever, her eye fixed on her scope. She hadn't flinched when the bullets tore the rooftop inches away. Her hands hadn't trembled. She was waiting. Cole's heart pounded. "Do you see him?" "Yes." Her voice was even, almost quiet. "Then take him," Harris snapped. But she didn't. She stayed steady, tracking. Her breathing was slow, methodical. Cole's nerves screamed. Every instinct told him to shout, to force her hand, but then he saw it, the faint rise and fall. Of her shoulders, the rhythm of her discipline. She wasn't hesitating. She was waiting for the single second that mattered. Through her scope, the hostile sniper was a phantom, weaving between shadows, firing from behind half cover. His precision was dangerous, but it was also predictable. He was trained, disciplined, but not flawless. His breathing, his movements, the rhythm of his shots, they all told her a pattern. And patterns could be broken. She exhaled, finger tightening. On the trigger. Another shot cracked from the hostile, shipping stone near Harris's arm. Maddox flinched, muttering a prayer. Cole gritted his teeth, trusting a woman he didn't even know. And then there it was. For a fraction of a second, the enemy shifted too far, exposing a sliver of his temple as he adjusted his aim. It was the opening no one else had the patience to wait for. She squeezed. Her rifle thundered. The bullet cut across the night, faster than thought, sharper than fate. Through her scope, she saw it strike clean, perfect. The hostile's head snapped back, his body collapsing instantly against the rooftop. His rifle clattered uselessly. Beside him, silence. The city seemed to hold its breath. Then Maddox gasped. Harris froze, his mouth open. Cole lowered his rifle slowly, staring at her with an expression he rarely allowed anyone to see, pure, unguarded awe. She didn't celebrate, didn't smirk or gloat. She simply lowered her rifle, her face as calm as before. "Clear," she said quietly, but the men around her felt anything but clear. They felt shaken, humbled. Harris rubbed the dust from his face, muttering, That was impossible." Cole's voice was low, rough. "No, that was perfect." The rooftop fell into a different kind of silence, then not tense, not doubtful, but reverent. They had all just witnessed something beyond skill. Something rare. One shot, one kill. The kind of shot snipers dreamed about, the kind legends were built on. And it hadn't come from any of them. It had come from her. For the first time that night, Cole allowed himself to let go of the question, who is she? Because now the answer didn't matter. All that mattered was this: she belonged. The bullet's echo faded into the night, swallowed by smoke and distance, but its weight remained heavy on the rooftop. The hostile sniper lay crumpled 2 buildings away, lifeless, his weapon glinting faintly in the moonlight. For the men of Cole's team, it wasn't just another kill. It was something far greater, something that bent the air between them into silence. Maddox was the first to break it. His hands were trembling, and he couldn't stop them. That was insane. He whispered, "Do you even realize what you just did?" His voice cracked, disbelief tangled in awe. She didn't answer. Her cheek was still pressed lightly to the stock, her scope sweeping calmly for new threats. The enemy was gone, but she wasn't celebrating. She was verifying. That was what professionals did. Cole's heart hammered in his chest. He'd been in combat long enough to see great shots, impossible angles, kills that felt like miracles. But this was different. This hadn't been chance. She had waited, studied, read the enemy like a book, and struck in the exact heartbeat where the window opened. He could barely believe what his own eyes had seen. Harris spat dust, shaking his head violently, as if trying to clear it. No way. You don't make a shot like that in real life. That's something out of a damn movie. It happened, Cole said quietly. She fired blind into a stairwell earlier, Maddox stammered. And now this. Who even? Is she? No one answered. The question hung in the air, a weight heavier than the rifles in their hands. A woman finally lowered her weapon, exhaling once, steady and controlled. She didn't look at them, didn't seek their approval. She just checked the chamber, adjusted her sling, and resumed her post like nothing had happened. Cole found himself studying her face in the dim light. There was no pride there, no arrogance, just focus. And in that focus, he saw something dangerous. This wasn't luck. This was who she was. The comms unit crackled suddenly, jarring them from their silence. "Bravo 1, report," came the voice of command. "Status on your rooftop? We've got chatter about hostile sniper activity near your sector." Cole hesitated, glancing at her. He keyed the mic. "Bravo 1 here. Hostile sniper eliminated. Sector secure." There was a pause on the line. "Repeat that?" "Sniper neutralized," Cole repeated, his voice steady. "Clean kill. No casualties on our side." More silence. "Then, copy that. Bravo 1. Command wants confirmation. Who took the shot?" Cole's lips parted, but the words stuck in his throat. For the first time in his career, he didn't know how to answer. If he said it was one of his men, command would accept it, without question. If he told the truth, that it had been the woman, then questions would come, hard and fast. He glanced at her again. She was already adjusting her scope, eyes on the horizon, unbothered by the weight of the moment. She didn't seem to care whether anyone knew or not. Cole pressed the mic. "The shot was made," he said carefully. "That's all that matters." Another pause. Then the line went dead. Maddox gave a shaky laugh. "You didn't tell them." "They don't need to know," Cole muttered. But in his chest, he knew he was lying to himself. They'll know eventually. Everyone will know. When dawn began to bleed faint light across the shattered city, the team finally rotated positions. They slipped into the ruined skeleton of an old office building, settling into shadows where they could rest. Maddox collapsed against the wall, rubbing his temples. Harris lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Only Cole remained upright, pacing slowly, restless energy eating at him. His eyes kept drifting to her, the stranger now resting quietly on a broken chair, rifle across her lap. She sat with the same discipline she fought with, still, focused, untouched by fatigue. The men were buzzing, whispering among themselves, when they thought she couldn't hear. "No one makes a shot like that," Harris muttered, voice hoarse. Not unless they've done it 1,000 times before." "She called the stairwell too," Maddox added. "That wasn't luck. That was experience. Serious experience." Harris frowned deeply, dragging on his cigarette. "But she doesn't wear any insignia. No patch, no ID. She showed up. That's not how this works. People don't just appear on sniper teams. Maybe Command sent her, Maddox guessed. Some specialist. Someone off the record. Harris shook his head. If that were true, we'd know. Cole would know. At her name, both of them turned toward their sergeant. Cole didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge the stares. His jaw was set, his thoughts tangled. She glanced up at them then, catching the weight of their gazes. For a moment, her eyes met Cole's, and something unspoken passed between them. Not defiance, not arrogance, just certainty. She didn't need to explain herself. The shot had already spoken louder than words ever could. By mid-morning, Command had word of the kill. The story spread fast through the units like wildfire. Snipers talked. Infantry squads whispered. By the time Cole's team rotated back to the forward operating base, soldiers were already looking at them differently. What's this I hear? About you boys dropping a counter-sniper last night? One officer asked, eyes wide. Cole's lips pressed tight. We did our job. But the questions kept coming. Who had taken the shot? How long was the range? Was it really as clean as the rumors claimed? The men of his team looked to him for an answer, but he avoided it. He wasn't ready to give the truth away. Yet even as he held it back, the weight of her presence pressed against him. This wasn't a secret that could be buried. Not when everyone had seen the results. Not when she was capable of turning the tide of battles with a single bullet. That night, in the quiet of the barracks, the team sat together. The woman was with them, cleaning her rifle in silence while the others argued. In hushed tones. She doesn't belong here, Harris muttered. Not officially. You know what happens if Command finds out she's been operating outside the chain. They won't care, Maddox countered. Not after a shot like that. They'll want her on every mission. They'll tear us apart, asking questions, Harris insisted. Where she came from, why she's here. Hell, she might not even be. Cole snapped his head toward him, eyes cold. Enough. The room went still. She's here, Cole said firmly. She's proven herself. That's all that matters. You don't like it? Tough. Because, whether you accept it or not, she saved our lives. Twice. Harris swallowed, looking away. Maddox nodded quickly, eager to agree. The woman said nothing. She simply slid the bolt back into her rifle, clicked it into place, and leaned the weapon against her chair. For the first time, Cole saw the faintest glimmer of expression cross her face. Not a smile, not pride, but a flicker of something deeper, resolve, as if she knew this was only the beginning. The base had its own rhythm boots on gravel, radios hissing, the constant churn of machinery, but in the days after the shot, the rhythm changed. Soldiers leaned in when Bravo 1 walked past, conversations dropping to whispers. Word of thee. Impossible kills spread faster than orders ever could. Some swore the range was over 1 kilometer. Others said she'd hit a target no one else could even spot. The truth hardly mattered anymore. A legend had been born. Cole hated legends. Legends attracted attention, and attention got people killed. Still, he couldn't deny what had happened. He'd watched it with his own eyes. And though his pride bristled at it, part of him felt a grim sort of relief. For the first time in a long time, he believed his team might actually survive what was coming. And what was coming arrived sooner than he expected. Command summoned Bravo 1 to the operations tent just after dawn. The air inside was heavy with cigarette smoke and the sour tongue of too much coffee. Maps were spread across the table, marked with red circles that bled into one another like wounds. Colonel Reeves, a man with a voice like gravel and eyes that missed nothing, stood at the head of the table. His gaze swept over the team, pausing on the woman longer than the rest. Sit, he ordered. They obeyed. Reeves stabbed a finger. At the map, we've confirmed the location of a high-value target, a commander orchestrating ambushes across the eastern districts. He's smart, slippery, and heavily protected. We've tried to hit him before. We failed, but intelligence says he's making a move tonight. Cole leaned forward. What's the objective, sir? Neutralization, Reeves said flatly. We cut off the head. The cells collapse. But we don't have the luxury of sending in a full assault. Too much risk of civilian casualties. This requires precision, which means it requires you. Maddox shifted uncomfortably. Harris's jaw clenched. They'd handled ambushes, overwatch, even counter-sniper duty, but a direct assassination mission? That was another weight entirely. Reeves's eyes moved again, settling on her. The silence stretched long enough for Cole to feel it pressing against his skin. I've heard the stories, Reeves said finally. A shot that changed everything. And I don't believe in stories. I believe in results. If she's half of what people say, this mission lives or dies on her trigger. The woman said nothing. Her face betrayed nothing. Cole spoke carefully. With respect, sir, this is a team operation. We work together. Reeves gave him a hard look. Don't mistake clarity for disrespect, Sergeant. I know what your team can do, but I also know you're sitting here because someone put a bullet exactly where it needed to be when it mattered most. Don't think I haven't noticed you dodging questions about who pulled that trigger. Cole's throat tightened, but he said nothing. Reeves leaned forward, voice low and sharp. I don't care about secrets. I care about results. Tonight, you get one chance. Bring me that commander's head, or don't come back. Back at their quarters, the team gathered in tense silence. The maps, the colonel's words, the weight of expectation, all of it, pressed down on them. Maddox finally broke. This is suicide. A high-value target, deep in enemy territory, protected. We're 4 men and her. He gestured toward the woman, his nerves bubbling over. What are we supposed to do? Walk in and pray her magic bullets save us again? Watch your mouth, Cole snapped. Maddox shut it, but the fear in his eyes didn't fade. Harris exhaled smoke, his expression dark. The colonel's not wrong. She's the reason we're even considered for this. Without her, we'd be just another team sitting out there, waiting to die. Cole turned to her. She sat cross-legged on the floor, rifle parts spread across a rag, hands moving with mechanical precision. She hadn't spoken a word since the briefing. Finally, Cole asked the question knowing at all of them. You've done this before, haven't you? Her hands stilled, just for a moment. Then she looked up, meeting his eyes. Yes, no explanation, no details. Just the truth, dropped like a stone into still water. Maddox paled. Harris blinked. Cole nodded once slow. That was all he needed. Night fell heavy and thick, the city cloaked in a darkness, broken only by firelight and the dull orange glow of ruined buildings. Bravo 1 moved like shadows, slipping through alleys, cutting across debris-strewn streets. Their boots made no sound. Their rifles glinted faintly under the moon. The target was holed up in a fortified safe house, intelligence said, surrounded by guards, barricades, and eyes that never slept. Cole's gut churned as they approached. The outer perimeter. He signaled, and the team fanned out, taking positions across a collapsed wall. Through his scope, he saw them guards with rifles slung lazily, smoke from a fire pit curling upward, laughter rising sharp against the night. Too relaxed, too confident. Harris whispered, They think they're untouchable. Cole's jaw tightened. Not tonight. The woman crawled forward, her movements fluid, every inch of her body silent. She pressed her cheek to the scope, and the world around her narrowed until only the guards remained. She didn't rush, didn't flinch. Her breathing steadied, her finger curled, and the first guard dropped without a sound. Panic rippled instantly. The others shouted, scrambling, searching the darkness for a threat they couldn't see. A second shot followed, then a third, each finding its mark with chilling precision. By the time the echoes faded, the fire pit was empty of life. Maddox whispered, "Holy hell." But Cole wasn't watching the bodies. He was watching her. And for the first time, he realized something terrifying. She wasn't just good. She wasn't just trained. She was the kind of sniper they built myths around. They moved in closer, slipping past the perimeter, hearts pounding. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a warning. Inside the safe house, lights burned dim, figures moving across the windows. Cole crouched, whispering into the cones. Targets inside. Window second floor, left corner. Through her scope, the woman saw him. A man in his 40s, dressed in fatigues far cleaner than the men he commanded. He leaned over a map, pointing, barking orders. He looked untouchable, certain the walls around him made him a god. Her crosshairs hovered on his chest. A simple squeeze, and it would all be over. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Cole hissed, "What are you waiting for?" She whispered, calm, steady, "One of them is his double. They've used this tactic before. If I kill the wrong man, the real commander escapes." Cole froze. He hadn't even considered it. But she had, instantly. She tracked the man's movements, studying every gesture, every command. And then she saw at the detail that gave him away. His boots. Scuffed, worn from movement. The doubles were too clean, too new. Her crosshair shifted. One breath, one trigger pull. The bullet punched through the glass, and the true commander collapsed over his table, blood spilling across his precious maps. Chaos erupted. Guards screamed, weapons fired wildly into the night. Bravo 1 pulled back fast, melting into shadows as the safe house ignited into panic. But the mission was already over. The commander was dead, and the shot that made it happen belonged to her. The city burned behind them as Bravo 1 melted into the shadows, retreating across crumbling rooftops and ruined alleys. The gunfire at the safe house thundered like a storm, but none of it mattered anymore. The commander was dead. His men were screaming into the void, firing wildly at phantoms, searching for enemies who were already gone. Cole led the way, heart pounding, rifle tight against his chest. Maddox stumbled after him, eyes wide with the raw shock of survival. Harris cursed under his breath, each exhale ragged, but his legs never slowed. And behind them, calm as the night itself, came the woman. Her steps were steady, her breathing unbroken. It was as though she hadn't just changed the war with a single bullet. By the time they reached their extraction point, the gunfire was already fading into chaos. The safe house was collapsing into confusion. No one would chase them now. Number 1 would even know where they had been. The helicopter arrived low and fast, rotors chopping the night into pieces. The team clambered aboard, collapsing into their seats, adrenaline still roaring in their blood. Cole sat opposite her, his eyes searching her face for some sign of anything, pride, relief, humanity. But she was the same as always, silent, composed, eyes already turned outward, watching the city shrink beneath them. At the forward operating base, command was waiting. Colonel Reeves stood on the tarmac, arms folded, his expression unreadable as the team disembarked. "Report," he barked. Cole stepped forward, saluting sharply. "Target neutralized. Confirmed KIA. 0 casualties on our side." Reeves studied him, then the others, and finally her. His gaze lingered, heavy, knowing. "I'll want the full debrief, but for now, good work." He dismissed them with a curt nod. But good work wasn't enough to contain what had happened. By morning, whispers had spread again. Soldiers passed rumors in the mess hall, in the barracks, even in the medical tents. A commander, untouchable for months, had fallen to a single shot. A shot so clean, so deliberate, that some swore it had been divinely guided. And once again, the whispers always circled back to her. The nameless woman who had appeared beside Bravo 1. The woman with the rifle, the impossible patience, and the unshakable calm. For the men of Bravo 1, the aftermath was different. Maddox couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his cot, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of I. That night, the guards dropping one by one, the commander collapsing across his maps. He couldn't shake the thought, we shouldn't have survived. But we did, because of her. Harris smoked more than usual. His pride knotted into something bitter. He hated relying on anyone. He hated that she had come out of nowhere and overshadowed them all. But every time he tried to argue it, the truth crushed him. She had saved his life. Twice. He owed her more than his pride could swallow. And Cole wrestled with something else entirely. Responsibility. He'd seen soldiers with talent before, but this was something more, something dangerous. A weapon so precise it could change the course of battles. He knew command would never let her go, not after what she'd done. And he wondered if she even cared. It wasn't long before command called her in alone. Cole watched from a distance as she disappeared into the colonel's tent. He didn't know what Reeves would ask, or how she would answer. He only knew that. When she emerged an hour later, she looked exactly the same. Calm, unchanged, as if words couldn't touch her. He wanted to ask what they'd said to her. He wanted to ask who she really was. But the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't cold. It wasn't hostile. It was simply final. As though she knew she couldn't explain, even if she tried. The mission rippled outward, beyond the base, beyond the city, beyond the war zone itself. News agencies whispered of a high-value target eliminated in the dead of night. Analysts speculated on the skill it required. Soldiers who'd never even seen her swore they had. She became a ghost story in real time, a figure half believed, half doubted, but always spoken of with awe. Some said she was special forces, black ops, a secret no one dared acknowledge. Others claimed she wasn't military at all, that she had appeared from nowhere, a phantom with a rifle. But for those who knew the truth, the legend was simpler. She was the woman who had taken her place beside the sniper team. And when the moment came, when a single bullet decided the fate of dozens, she hadn't missed. On their last night together before rotation, Bravo 1 sat in silence around a zone. Dying fire. The base was restless around them, generators humming, distant shouts echoing, but their small circle felt cut off from it all. Maddox fiddled with a bullet between his fingers, rolling it back and forth. Harris stared into the flames, his cigarette forgotten. Cole sat across from her, his thoughts heavy but unsaid. Finally, Maddox spoke, voice low. I don't even know your name. The fire popped, filling the silence that followed. She looked at him once, then back at the flames. You don't need it. Maddox swallowed, nodding. Somehow he understood. Harris let out a rough laugh, shaking his head. Doesn't matter what your name is. People will remember you anyway. Hell, they already do. She didn't respond. Cole studied her, the flicker of the flames painting shadows across her face. He wanted to tell her something, thank you, maybe, or you belong here. But the words felt too small for what she had done. So instead, he said nothing, because deep down, he knew the truth. Her story wasn't meant to be contained by them. It was already bigger. When she left, she did so the same way she had arrived, quietly. Without ceremony, without explanation. One day she was there, cleaning her rifle in the corner of their barracks, and the next, her bunk was empty. No one saw her go. But her absence didn't erase her. If anything, it made her larger. The men of Bravo 1 carried her memory like a secret they couldn't put down. And beyond the base, beyond the war, her legend grew. Soldiers told the story of the woman sniper who had saved an entire squad, who had outdueled an enemy marksman, who had killed a commander with a shot no one else would have even tried. Some swore she was still out there, moving from battlefield to battlefield, appearing only when needed most. Others said she had vanished for good, her rifle laid to rest, her silence eternal. But everyone agreed on one thing. They had seen something rare, something that didn't just change a mission. It changed the way they believed in what was possible. And it all began the night she took position beside the sniper team, when everyone gasped and her bullet found its mark.